Hello everyone, welcome back. We're doing day after shooting 500 yards shooting analysis. Okay, it's actually been 4 days, but I've been kind of busy digesting a bunch of information. I've been running the bullets through the chronograph here to see what my velocities is, and that's an important factor because bullets going at different speeds are going to impact differently downrange. Okay, so the ammunition that I was using on Thursday when I was shooting this is these Federal premiums. Okay, and the important thing here to be aware of is that the velocity that is quoted on this is 2720, right? 2,720 feet per second. Let's just call it 2,700, right? That's that number right there where my thumb is, top line, okay, on the muzzle. Okay, so this is quoted at 2,700 feet per second, which is what you're supposed to be using. That's basically if you're using a Raptor, right? One of the Raptor reticles, which is this one over here, which has the built-in bullet drop compensator. Primary Arms tells you that you're supposed to be using a velocity that's going about 2,700 feet per second. They tell you use either the MK262 or the TMK 556, okay? Because these bullets go at about 2,700 feet per second. I don't know what length barrels this is quoted at, but that's what Primary Arms tells you to use. Aside for a second. So when I ran this through the chronograph, right, using this ammunition, I was not getting the 2,700 feet per second that the box says I'm going to be getting. The actual, right, came in at 2534. Okay, so it came in about 200 feet per second slower than what this box says. Okay, now I'm guessing that when they tested this out, they were using, I don't know, maybe a 26-inch barrel. I mean, I don't know how they got the velocity up that high. I did four 5-shot groups with this, right? So I did it on 2 different rifles, both of these 18 inches. So these are 18-inch rifles. So if I'm getting 2534 instead of the 2700 that they're saying on 18-inch rifles, that's why I'm saying they must have been using like a 26-inch barrel or something. Okay? And if you're using like a 16-inch barrel, you're going to be even slower than this. Okay. So now, if you do this type of testing, which I think you kind of have to, because you really can't go by what these boxes say. And these chronographs are $100, so they're not expensive. If you do this kind of testing, make sure that you got a bright sun over your head, right? If it's cloudy, it's not going to work. I was trying to do it yesterday when it was a little bit cloudy, and I was getting a lot of bogus readings. You gotta do this with a bright sun over your head in order for this to work. So, so that's important. I measured these velocities to be at about 2534. Okay, and the results of this. Okay, where am I? Let's start off with the M8. We're going to start with the $1,500 scope, which has the Raptor, right? That's the M8 Raptor. Okay. So in order for me to get the hits that I'm getting, right? Because the way I kind of got to this, I kind of like went into it ass backwards in terms of, I got to a range where I could shoot 500 yards, and I adjusted so that I could get on the paper at 500 yards. And then I went back and I shot it at 100 yards and 50 yards to see, what the zeros are. Okay. So in order for me to now what I did with the M8 with this M8 Raptor, which has this bullet drop here. Let's take a closer look at the bullet drop. Okay, so with this bullet drop over here, the first line over here is 400. The second line right there, that's your 500. Okay, so what I did is I took that 500 and I centered that at the top of the paper over here. Okay, I mean, that's how I set this up. I centered it at the top of the paper, and my impacts are just below this. Okay, so 10-shot group with that Federal ammo there. The total group is about 13 inches. All right, 13-inch total group. And again, remember, I was holding at the top of the paper. I'm about 10 inches down. Right, I'm 10 inches down. Now, if I wanted to like be in the center, like if I wanted to impact right in that line, basically I'd have to adjust up like 1 or 2 clicks For the purpose of this testing, I'm okay with these impacts because it's a lot easier for me to hold that line at the top of the paper because it's a straight line on top of a straight line. And then I got all this room underneath here to see where my bullets are impacting. So for now, this is going to be working great. You know, as far as that's where I want to be at 500 yards. Down the road, I may change this. I got some additional information to work with, but for now, this works good. So on this Ruger MPR, right, with these bullets that go, what do we say, goes 25, 34. Okay. Now, here's the thing. This is part of the reason why this is important is because this other ammunition here, right, the one that Primary Arms tells us to use, the MK262 and TMK556. I looked it up. I might get it at some point, but it's $85 for a box. Okay, I think it's 50 rounds in the box, but still $85 in the box. I mean, even though let's say I have a generous budget, right? That's pretty expensive ammunition to be shooting thousands of rounds with. Okay, in fact, and the reality is that most of the people that I train are not going to be able to afford that type of ammunition. So that's why I kind of have to make this stuff work. Okay, and I imagine that most of you watching this are probably going to be in a similar situation. So this is a great reticle. So we're talking about here how to make this work for us, because working with the Raptor is quite a convenience. Like I have a mill grid here. Like one rifle has a mill grid, the other one has this Raptor. I mean, working with the Raptor is a little bit easier, right? The mill grid gives you a lot more information. You can do more measurements, stuff like that. But the Raptor is really easy to to get on target and take your shots. So as far as making this work for me, right, with this Raptor, with the 500-yard line at the top of the paper, okay, and impacting about 10 inches low, the way I got here, okay, at 100 yards, okay, ignore that hole, that was just off. I am 1 3/4 high. Okay, with the chevron at the bottom of the bullseye, I am 1 3/4 inches high. Okay, so that's my zero at that's where I'm at 100 yards, and at 50 yards. At 50 yards, I am dead bullseye. Okay, so if you have this Raptor, if you're using ammunition that in reality is going about 25, 34, not the nonsense that they print on the box, you're probably going to need to zero in at 50 yards, and then if you're shooting 500 yards, you're going to have to hold at the top of the paper so you can impact about 10 inches below that. Okay, so that's like this is this is not theoretical. This is dope. This is like what actually happened here. Okay, now with the Griffin, right, with the other one. Now this M8 Raptor on top of this Ruger MPR. Great setup, great scope. I absolutely love this scope. This is a first focal plane scope. The great thing about this is if you're in one power, you see this image, right? You're basically seeing a duplex reticle, right, with a horseshoe in the center, right? But when you zoom in, you see this detail, right? So this all this detail is in there. It's just that you can't see it until you zoom in. That's when you get this detail, and you have the benefit of having an easy to read bullet drop compensator with wind holds, but you also have mill lines. So if you wanna, let's say you're trying to measure something like a door, or a truck, because all trucks are like 13, all tractor trailers are like 13.5 feet wide, 75 feet long. If you're using something other than a man, you can use the mill grid to take those measurements. And then if you want to measure based off of a man, you got the auto ranging on the side that you range the height of a man or the half height of a man, or you can auto range on the shoulders, right? These lines over here will match up to a man's shoulders. So this is really easy and convenient to work with. So this is a great reticle, but it's like $1,500, right? There's a $1,500 reticle. I mean, I love it, but it's a little tough for me to convince new people coming into this game to get into a $1,500 scope, right? And that doesn't include the mount, right? With the mount, you're into, already you're up to $1,600, okay? So this one over here that I've been working with, this is on top of a Palmetto. So again, both of these are 18-inch barrels. Both of these are basically $600 guns. Okay, so the rifles themselves are cheap. They relatively cheap. They both have shot a half-inch group at 100 yards with this ammunition, right? With both of the ammunitions that we're talking about. So these are very accurate rifles at a budget price. And the scope, this scope over here, instead of being the $1,500, this is a $450 scope. So this is a great budget scope. And the thing I like about it is it has almost all of the information that the $1,500 scope has, right? Almost all the information, or you can figure out how to use it. And I've done videos, I did a very detailed video on how to use this reticle. Let me show you guys what the reticle looks like. It looks like that. All right, so you've got the auto ranging here that you can use on the height of a man. Then you can get the line over here where you can range the half height of a man. All right, you got the shoulder ranging lines over here, but then you also have the mill grid here so that you can basically range estimate based on, let's say, the size of known things like a door, right? All doorways are about 80 inches tall, right? So you can, or a truck or whatever, things of known sizes. You can use the mill grid. So this mill grid is great. The only thing that you got to kind of memorize is your wind drift holds, right? Because the Raptor tells you, it gives you 5, 10, 15 to 20 mile per hour winds. Here you have to use the grid lines, and you got to have this data over here memorized. So for a full value wind coming in sideways at 300 yards at 10 miles per hour, it's a half mil. At 20 miles per hour, it's a full mil. At 500 yards, 10 mile per hour wind is 1 mil. 20 mile per hour wind is 2 mils. At 700 yards, a 10 mile per hour wind is 1.5 mils. A 20 mile per hour wind is 3 mils. But even if you just memorize the 10 mile per hour numbers, then you just double these numbers, okay? Or if you just memorize the 20 mile per hour numbers, right? Because these are nice, because these are 1, 2, 3. So that might be easier to remember, right? And then basically you just cut in half for 10 miles per hour, or quarter it for 5. So it's probably easier just to remember the 20 mile per hour numbers over here. So this is the only place where I think the mill grid is probably a little bit more difficult than, let's say, the Raptor. The wind, holding for wind is a little bit easier on the Raptor versus this, but you can definitely make this work for you. So for $450. You got a scope here that can kind of do everything that the $1,500 one, right? Here at $450. So this is what I'm mostly recommending for most of my customers who are kind of like on a budget, right? So with a total package, you get on the Palmetto here, 223 Wild, right? You got to, I think that it was like $350 for the upper, I think $150 for the lower. So basically got a $500 rifle, and then you've got $450 for the scope, $100 for your mount. That's the Aerial Precision. It's a light mount. So if you're in at about $1,100, you got a rifle now. You got basically a complete rifle here that will shoot a half-inch at 100 yards with the 77 grain match grade bullets. Okay. The thing that we got to be aware of, though, is like where they're gonna impact. So in order to make it work with the Raptor, again, that the Raptor is set up for certain, for specific velocity, okay? And if you're not hitting that specific velocity, right, because you got to actually test it out to see if you're hitting it, you got to come up with your own data, okay? So the data that I have come up with in order to hit at 500 yards is I got to be an 1.75 inches high at 100 yards, or a 50-yard bullseye. That will get me to, the 500 yards, and I'm impacting low, right? So if I know if I'm shooting at a man-sized target at 500 yards, I gotta basically put my my 500 yard hold at the top of the shoulders so I can impact 10 inches low. Okay, so that's something that I gotta have memorized. Okay? If for whatever reason I want to put it in the center, then I'd have to probably adjust like one or two clicks up. Okay, so let's talk about. Let's talk about this $450 scope, what I did here. with this, I'm using the 3 mil mark, okay? So when you look over here, so with this, hold on, we got what was our zero on this? Okay, so in order for me to get this information here, to get these results, right? So we're kind of backing into this based on the results. So the results here are, I'm holding at the 3 mils at the top, and my group is about 12 inches, right? And my center is about 7 inches down, right? 7 inches down. In order for me to get this with this this M10S Miffin grid, right? What I had to do is, you see the second line, right? Because that's 2 mils. The 3 mil, right? That line over there. Okay. In order for me to be able to put that at the top of the paper and impact like this, what I had to do was, my 50-yard zero is 1 inch high. So with the chevron at the bottom of the bullseye, right there, right, I want to impact 1 inch high over here, which works out to, right, right, so from the bottom of the bullseye, I'm 1 inch high over here at 50 yards, and at 100 yards, where I'm going to impact is 3 inches high. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do with this ammunition. All right, in order for this to work. So that's the data. That's the data. If you guys are using the cheaper ammunition, like I am right now, well, actually this one over here, if you guys are using the cheaper ammunition, that's what you're going to have to do in order to be able to hit, to be able to hit at 500 yards. And again, you can adjust this if you want to be able to, like, put your bullseye in the center and hit in the center, you can do that. The problem with putting the bullseye in the center, like this little bullseye here, the problem is that you cannot see this bullseye at 500 yards, right? It's going to completely, the 3 mil bar, right, is going to completely cover this up, right? That 3 mil bar is going to be like this big compared to the bullseye. So you're going to completely cover that. So it's a lot easier to put that in the center of the paper like that and drop below that. So practically speaking, I find that a little easier to work with. But if, I mean, you could, I guess, put a big, thick piece of tape over here and try to anchor on that. In which case, yeah, if you want to impact exactly on that 3 mil bar, you're going to probably have to adjust 1 or 2 clicks up. Okay. Now, other thing worth saying is there's also another type of ammunition I've been using. This one's also 77 grains, Sierra Match King. This one's actually running a little bit faster, okay? So I did the same thing here. I tested 4 5-shot groups, okay? Muzzle, now this doesn't quote a velocity on this, right? So these guys are smart enough not to put anything on there so that people wouldn't call them lies. But they didn't put a velocity. So when I tested this out at the muzzle, this came out to 2590, okay? 2590 versus 2534 of the other ones. So this Federal Premium is actually going a little bit slower. This on target is going a little bit faster, but the variance on these, right, the speed between the bullets there's more of a variance on this. So when I looked at the variances on the Federal Premium, in each of looking at each of the 5-shot groups, first group I had a variance of 29, then 41, then 75, then 107. Okay, so the average variance, right? Average variance from the mean, right, is 63 on this, versus this one over here, which is going a little bit faster, but the average variance on this, on each of the 5 groups, I have 128, 96, 112, and 57. So my average variance on this is 28. So even though this is going faster, the variance between the bullets on this is 100 versus the variance over here is 60. So you're probably going to get tighter groups more often with this one. So it doesn't matter if it's going, I think you want the smallest variance possible, because that's going to give you more accuracy. You may have to adjust a little bit higher if it's going slower, but you're going to get consistent groups more frequently. Okay, so pay attention to the variance. That variance is the reason why you can't get bullets to go through the same hole very often. Okay, because when you're burning gunpowder, right, when you're burning gunpowder is a chemical reaction, right? It's a chemical reaction, and even under lab conditions, right? I think that the best reaction rate that I think they get is like something like 97%. So what that means is that at least 3% of the gunpowder in here is not burning. Okay, so and that's gonna change. You might have like 97.1 burn, 97.2 burn, 97.3 burn. From bullet to bullet, and that's gonna be the reason why you get this little bit of a spread. Even if you put the gun in the vise so that it's not movable, right? And you're shooting it, and you have no wind, right? Your bullets are still not going to land on top of each other because the gunpowder from bullet to bullet is not burning 100%, right? There's a percentage that does not burn. That's why you can't put bullets inside of bullets, okay? So I hope you guys found that information useful. I certainly did. So I've got some information to work here with. Now I was able to get some ballistics information based on these. Basically, I had a friend of mine run this information through a ballistic calculator, and basically I have an idea now of where I would be at 700, 800, 900 yards. Of course, I got to actually test it out to see what it does. But at least if because the Raptor only goes up to 800 yards, right? So now if one of the ranges I'm shooting at, I basically jumped from 550 up to 850 yards. So, and then 900 and 1,000. So where would I be holding? Now with that information that I have some idea of which line to use over here. Same thing with the mill grid. Okay, I know where I'm at 500 yards. Using the a ballistic calculator, you can figure out where I would want to be at 600 yards, 700 yards, 800 yards, and then after you do, then you got to actually shoot it and get some real data, right? And then once you get the real data is going to be a lot more useful than the calculated data. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I think the most important part that comes out of this video is, the velocity, the bullet's velocity is really going to affect how well this the bullet drop compensators work, right? So this is the Raptor. It's set up for a specific speed, 2,700 feet per second. Primary arms advise you to use the MK262 or TMK556 in order to make this bullet drop work. And if your bullets aren't going the same exact speed as this, you're going to get different results. Now, you can still make it work for you, but you just got to go into it with like eyes wide open and know that you got to make it work for you. Now, let me say this: a lot of times I've heard people say in the past, if you're starting off with this bullet drop compensator, and based on different ammunition that you're using, because even if you're using, let's say, a 55 grain versus 62 grain versus a 77 grain, if you gotta kind of adjust this for the different ammunition, different loads, is there a point to this, right? Why not just use a mill grid, right, where you can just kind of start from scratch, right, and build up your own data? Well, having both rifles here, right, the Raptor and the mill grid, I can tell you guys it's definitely easier to work with the Raptor. I mean, this is a lot easier as a starting point, and then fine tuning from here. The mill grid is great, but there's a lot of data in there. There's lots of little dots that you got to work around. So there's and you got to kind of build up your database from scratch here. Now it kind of helps with the information I gave you guys, where you kind of know where to start with this. But this is a little bit harder to work with. Now, I had a primary arm scope that had the Raptor, it was like Raptor only, right? So it didn't have a mill grid around it. I had it for about 2 or 3 weeks. I got rid of it. I didn't like having the Raptor only because I was coming up short, right? Even though it gave me a bullet drop, even though it gave me wind holds, a lot of times I want to actually, I don't know the distance to something, right? And I don't have, let's say, a rangefinder. So I found that having the Raptor alone was kind of limiting. That's why I love the M8, because it kind of combines the Raptor with the wind holes and the bull drop, but also gives you a mill grid, also gives you, auto ranging based on the size of a man. So I absolutely love this reticle. It's my favorite reticle. However, this is a $1,500 scope. I wish Primary Arms would make, let's say, a second focal plane version of this, right? This exact thing here, that just, second focal plane, where it's the same image at all distances, because then you could kind of use the top line here to do your measuring. That would work, right? And then, so this M10S kind of comes close to that, right? It comes close to that, and I think they do have a Raptor version of this. When I looked at it, when I looked at the Raptor version, I wasn't quite satisfied with the ability to size things up, right? Because and that's why I decided to go with the mill grid on this. So I think that the Raptor version of this M10S, if they could like at least put some mills going up, that people can, that might become more useful. I don't know, just my thoughts on that. But right now, for most people, this is the scope that I recommend to most of the customers that I have that are interested in something like this, because this gives you kind of like the best of all worlds, where you can size things up, you can size people on this, you can size objects, you've got and then you got the mill grid, where you can kind of if you know your wind drifts over here, that's not an issue. You can use the mill grid to do your wind drift hold. So this is the scope that I think that most people are going to end up buying right now, just because it's a lot more affordable. $450 versus $1,500. Okay, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. And like I said, I do this video not just for you guys, but also for myself, because down the road, I may need to come back and look at this. If you guys have noticed, I've done a lot of videos on these scopes and on shooting at distance lately, because that's the interesting thing to me right now. Like last year, if you go back and look at my last year, I think like 2 out of every 3 videos was about building polymer 80s, because that was like my thing last year. So whatever I happen to find to be interesting and challenging at any given point in time, that's the thing that I focus on. I'm not paid by Primary Arms. I don't do affiliate links. I don't get any money from Primary Arms in any way. So if I'm telling you guys that these scopes are good, they're good. Especially this $450 one. I think it's a great budget scope. That can take you the distance, right? With a reticle like this, okay, you can take this like to an advanced class, and you've got a lot of stuff here that you can work with, right? If you show up with a scope that, let's say, just has a bullet drop compensator on it, right? Well, there's a limited number of things that you can do with it, right? You're not going to be able to do the range estimating and stuff like that. So this scope over here, you can take to like an advanced, to advanced marksmanship class, and you can keep up with some of the other people that have much more expensive scopes than this. So that's why, and that's how I'm using it. Most of the people that come here or meet me at a different location for training, right? Most of the people, I'm not going to put them on a $1,500 scope, right? This is my baby, okay? I got to really like you to let you shoot this, okay? Most of the people that I train at different ranges that I go to, they get this one, right? I train them on this one, the $450 scope, because if they drop this or something and they scratch it, I'm not going to want to kill them, okay? I can live with a little bit of damage on the $450 scope. I'm going to be very upset if somebody scratches my $1,500 scope over there. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.